Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films and Cinder Block Studios, and I'm back with another acrylic painting tutorial. Now, in my previous tutorial, I talked about creating water lines and waterfalls, but I didn't really discuss on how to create those loose underlying tones of the water itself, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So the first thing I need to do is to fill in these couple of rocks that I have sitting here. I'm just adding a little bit of color to them to basically create placeholders. I don't want to lose where they are roughly on my canvas, and putting this down I'll be able to go over top of it with lighter washes, and that way I'll be able to sort of keep in mind where the rocks are, but I won't have to worry about painting around them. I can just paint right on top of them. So this is just a little bit of a brown mixture I'm working with right now. Alright, now I'm going to let those few rocks there dry. Okay, now that our rocks are pretty much dry, we're going to start dropping in the water here, just, real loose. Now there's a lot of different ways to do water. You can do it really detailed and see all these little intricate reflections and that kind of thing. But for this technique, we're going to go relatively loose and kind of keep it a little more fun in that way. So you want to take a look at overall the colors in the rest of the piece. Right now I haven't colored the entire piece yet, but I've got some darks and some other things up top that are going to give me a nice basis for what colors I'll be using. Now in doing the water, you want the water to really reflect off of just about everything that you have in the piece. So you want to have all these little different colors in there if you can, so I want to try and get a lot of different colors within the water. To start out, I'm just going to go with my darks, because at this point I like to work my darks in and under the rocks, and that way they can mix in and kind of meld with the other colors as we work along. So I'm going to start with a little bit of Prussian blue, and there's a little bit of this nasty brown color that I used on the rocks earlier on the brush, and kind of creates a bluish brown, and we're keeping it very, very loose, very watery. So you want to throw little shadows in under the rocks. This whole section is a big staircase, so I want this to be pretty shadowed under here. And again, we can go right over top of our rocks, since we're not really concerned about covering them up. Grab some more water, just real loose. Get a little more blue with this. Mix that into our water. My water line's up here. We don't want to go too far into that. I've got some rocks here that I'll be shadowing into. Got a little more brown. So some stuff I want shadows in here, a little bit in here. And that's really all we need in terms of shadow water. The rest of this is going to be more out in the open. Now I have a jar here of some used mixed paint. It's got a nice sort of deep sort of sap green color in it. I'm going to grab a little bit of that. There's the blue and the green together a bit here. Again, creating a real loose, wet sort of mix. I'm going to start throwing some of that down in here. Mix those in with the shadows a little bit. Do my edges like I always do. Pull in my blue a little bit more here. Alright, now we're going to grab some of that brown. Start reworking the shadow layers. We're keeping things real loose here. Just doing pretty much whatever. I think I had a rock in here that I might have lost. Yeah, whatever. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit of cad yellow as I'm using that, mixing with my green in some areas. I'm going to throw a little bit of cad red also on the palette since I'm using that color as well. Oh, I already have some. So I'm going to start with a little bit of cad red. Just a tiny little bit. This is too much already on the brush. I got to thin this out quite a bit. I don't want to overpower it with that red, so just kind of throw them in a couple areas. That's probably more than enough. Again, keep rinsing your brush, keep it loose. Let's grab a little bit of our yellow. Again, real watery. If you've seen my tutorials before, you know that a lot of times I'll do a 50-50 water to paint mixture. This is way waterier than that. You're looking at probably maybe 10% paint per bit of water. Blue. The trick is to kind of keep it real loose. You don't want to over mix your colors too much. You have to let them be where they are. A little more blue and green. I want to start thinking now a little bit about the direction of the water and where it's moving. This is kind of designed to be more of an ocean, maybe a sea. So we want to kind of keep it real straight over here, but as we get closer to the rocks, the water's moving a lot more. And using the water, you can now create these little variations and waves and rapids before you even add in the highlight layers and those little bit of water lines. A little more dark. Let's get more of that dark bluish brown. Since our shadows are starting to disappear, so we're going to keep working them back in. This is closer to a 30-70 mix. Water line's right up here. I'm holding way back on the far end of the brush to get that both loose and still be able to control it. Get a little more of the yellow. Maybe mix it with some of the green a bit. Don't be afraid just to kind of go nuts with the brush. I'm going to mix a little bit of red and yellow here. Create sort of an orange. Put some of that right in here. Okay. Now I'm going to grab a dry fan brush and very lightly just kind of brush across the wet paint. And this will remove any bubbles that we created through the process. Dry a little bit of that paint off with my edge. We don't want to mix this too much. Just right here I started to mix it a little bit. I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna have to be able to drag it back just a little bit more. Alright, well, our water isn't completely dry right now. There's a few little spots where the water is a little bit heavier, but it's dry enough in the areas that we're going to need to be working with. So I'm going to bring my palette over here for just 1 second. You can see that I've got my reds, a couple of blues that were dry. There's the Prussian blue, a couple of greens, and the yellow, and I put the white right in the center so we can work off of that in just about every little corner of the water here. I'm going to be grabbing a smaller round brush. I was using a little bit larger one earlier. And we're going to start out with sort of that Prussian blue-green mixture, and then a little bit of white. Or, about like that. So we're going to go in up to our water line here, and just ease it around, pulling that little bit of color, maybe a little more white, into making this water. And at this point we're just brightening up these areas. We have a lot of real shadowy, dark areas. So at this point we just want to pull that color together. And again, don't forget to add a lot of water to this. Probably doing about a 40% paint to a 60% water mixture right here. And we're going to have this cliff that kind of comes down and into the water a little bit here, so we want to kind of work around that a little bit. We're basically setting up the base for adding our water lines. Just pure white and a tiny, tiny little bit of that yellow. Just enough to create a bit of a pale color. And moving to 30% paint to about 70% water, maybe a little more or less, give or take. Just kind of toning that in. Pull it around a little bit. And again, we still have a little bit of bubbles that are kind of drying as bubbles, so at this point we can pull some of those out a little bit with our brush. If you notice you're starting to pull some paint up, then you know you need to grab a little bit more. I love this area here with this orange. I want to try not to pull too much of that away. This is almost a dry brush now. Grab a little more. We're working in very small quantities. This is pretty much the exact opposite of what we were just doing with a whole lot of paint and a whole lot of water. This is very slow, very small areas at a time. We don't want to overmix too much. I'm not pulling, I'm getting kind of wet just the tip of the brush a little bit to kind of pull that color in and let it mix a little. get them out of your edges. Don't have to be real precise, just kind of brush it out a little. And our rocks are still showing underneath here, so we'll be able to go right over top of those once we finish the water. A little more paint in my water mixture. Grab a little bit of our blue here since we're starting to get into the shadows again. Get some of that grayish color. We're going to add a little more bit of yellow though. Keep it sort of a mild blue. Grab now back into the pure white and mix it with some of our dark brownish color. Creating a different sort of pale. For right in here. Grab a little more water, a little more blue. Off the bottom a bit. That's about all there is to it. Well, that's about it for this tutorial. If you want to continue with this lesson, check out last week's video on creating water lines, and you'll see just how to finish that up and add the final details to the section of the water that I created today. And if you're looking for more tutorial videos, be sure to check out the channel and subscribe. This has been from DMC Films and Cinder Block Studios. See you guys next time.